I'm always really happy to have a collaborative team. My editor of this book, Sarah, was brilliant. Even before she gets the book, I send it to my agent and my agent gives feedback. The copy editor on this book was amazing. So there's always a team in every process. So when people are like, oh, the book's better, the way the author wrote it is the only way that you can present this material or something like that. I don't really believe in that. I think that I'm always working with the team, and I think that teams make things better. And honestly, my daughters will read things ahead of time and give me feedback, because especially if I have a teen character, I don't imagine that I'm still a teenager, And so I was always checking in with students and my daughters and like checking details. And I was excited to see where River and Allison would write it. I was excited what Bill would add to the project. I was excited once I heard that Scarlett was involved, what's her voice going to be like and how's that going to change the character? Jake's work on sound design is amazing. There were things in this podcast as American Afterlife that weren't even in the original book because they're in the sequel that isn't even out as a book yet. It was just such a cool opportunity to see a bigger and better product, and I was happy with what happened.
Benztown president Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi!
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
Today's episode is a first for me, and I am really excited about this one. We are going to dive into a brand new scripted podcast, American Afterlife, which is dropping April 21st. It's a project that's been 2 years in the making, and it brings together storytelling, sound design, and performance in a really immersive way. And to do it, we've got 3 incredible guests joining me. First, say hello to Pedro. He's an award-winning author whose work has been recognized by the American Library Association and featured everywhere from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal, and the creator behind American Afterlife. Then Bill, a legendary film producer with decades at the highest levels of the industry, with credits across Fox, MGM, and Columbia, and he was the executive producer of one of my all-time favorite movies, The Rock, with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. And finally, Scarlett, a rising star who's grown up on screen from Daddy's Home to Lucifer, and now brings this story to life as a lead voice while also reaching millions as a social media influencer. I'm going to spend a few minutes with each of them one-on-one and then bring everyone together at the end. So let's start with the man behind the story, Pedro. Pedro, welcome, man. Pedro, we've been working with you now for over 2 years on this project, and I really appreciate you, man, to see you in person and to just meet you today for the first time like 15 minutes ago. It really means a lot, and thank you for taking the time, for being here and coming down from Eugene. Before we dive in, you had asked, could you read a few paragraphs from the book? So can we get started with a few paragraphs from the book?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you so much for having me. This is really cool. I've never done an interview with 4 other people too, so this is great. All right, the book, American Afterlife, starts with a chapter titled My Island. 2 days after, and I can already smell the bodies decomposing in the houses. I stand on the sidewalk outside, wondering if it's the meat of them, not the bones, but the soft tissues, and the gases building, the sense of rancid fats coming through skin. No flesh wrapped in plastic, no flesh refrigerated. I close my eyes and tell my mind to go somewhere else. But this is where I am, stuck. The houses in the neighborhood are pulled sideways off their foundations, all of their upper stories caved, and some of their lower stories too, trees through roof gaps, houses like boats broken against rocks. I've spent the last 24 hours searching through the wreckage on the upper half of the block.
Your life and your own personal journey is really quite remarkable in its own way and is probably worthy of its own book. How did American Afterlife and the writing of it, how was that tied to your personal life, and where did that come from?
Well, there were actually a lot of different ties. This was a book that I was excited to write for a long time because I wanted to write a survival story, and my other novels had delved into different conflicts and different age demographics and, a lot of different characters, but I hadn't just put a character in an intense survival situation, because I, growing up, was in some really intense survival situations and then ended up teaching wilderness survival for 19 years. And I wanted to do everything from, scavenging for food, which is something I knew about because some of my earliest memories are when my family was on food stamps and getting church food boxes when I was a kid in Tucson, Arizona, when we lived in Tucson. And my mom would, tell me I was the man of the family, right? Even though I was 6. And she would say, el hombre de familia, like I'm the man. And so she would drive the car to the Safeway every Tuesday when they would put the outdated boxes and cans and produce in there. And then I would get on the roof of the car and jump into the dumpster. So some of my earliest memories are like every Tuesday going to the Safeway and dumpster diving for food, And sometimes you just get 3 pallets of broccoli, and then my mom makes as many things as she can make out of broccoli. Or as many things as you can add to broccoli, everything. So I wanted to do something where there was like scavenging for food, but also that kind of survival itinerant experience too. When I was in high school and my family was falling apart, I was homeless off and on, sometimes for a couple months or sometimes for a few weeks. And I would stay at my friends' houses sometimes, but lots of times, you don't want to overstay your welcome, and you can tell like a family's already kind of strained, and my friends' families weren't wealthy. And so, I've slept behind 7-Elevens, behind dumpsters. I've slept in hedges. I slept in a Dallas bus station for 2 weeks one time, slept out on the street against buildings on the warm grates when they pump warm air in cities. So I just, I've had these experiences where you're kind of like scrounging for food, or you're trying to figure out where you're going to sleep, or where you're going to get clothes. And so I wanted to give a character those kinds of challenges, but also I wanted her to be somebody that was like my daughter, Ruth Tortuga, like, because her personality is so wild. Like she's definitely a survivor, and she's got all these amazing traits that I admire so much in her, but also, like she can get really frustrated or angry, or sometimes get in some trouble, or she even got arrested for shoplifting food when she was in high school. So I wanted this character to mirror my daughter in her personality, but also have some of these intense survival challenges. And then my wife, Jay, she studied geology in college. And so she's been telling me about the Cascadia quake coming forever. And so I was like, well, what if we have the Cascadia quake and it actually happens and it destroys the city? And then we have somebody that's like Rue, my Tortuga, and that's what's been so cool about this project, and seeing it actually be developed, and then hearing Scarlett as the voice, because somebody as talented as Scarlett with that kind of almost gravelly voice is the perfect person to take on these survival challenges. So I'm really excited about this project, and I'm really grateful for the team and for everybody who's working so hard on it.
And was it Bill that reached out to you initially about adopting this? I'm trying to remember the whole chain of events, Bill. And to give a little bit more background on Bill, a good friend of mine, and we started golfing together and just kind of hanging out. And we decided it would be a lot of fun to work on a podcast. And as we were looking around for some IP to develop, we'd actually started on another project first.
Right. And the way it started was the way things usually start, is someone knows someone who knows something else. I was working with a writer on another project, on a documentary I just finished, and told him by happenstance, hey, we're looking for a project to do as a podcast and then hopefully as a TV series. And he said, I know one that you might like, and gave me the book, which I read, and just said, this is perfect for TV. But these days we're going about it a different way. Usually, in the past, and I'll date myself a bit, you would take a book and you would walk into a studio with a pitch, and they would say, oh, we like the book, we like what you're saying, let's develop it together. But that doesn't happen anymore. You've got to come into the studios with the book, a writer, a director, an actress and maybe half the money so that they'll even talk to you. And what's happened is podcasts have become a way to develop projects for film and television. And a number of them have jumped. And we thought when you and I were talking, Chachi, about what kind of material would be suitable for a podcast and to move on to another media. And as I said, after we read the book and you read the book, we said, wow, this could be great. Not as a traditional podcast with a narrator, but let's do a drama. Let's act it out. Let's do it like I called it old-time radio. And that's when we contacted Pedro and talked about what we were doing. And he said, this sounds fantastic. Go ahead, guys. Let's see what we can do. And 2 years later,
here we are.
I was so excited. I've had friends who have had things optioned for films and then nothing happens. And so they talk to directors and they talk to producers and they sign options and they try over and over and over and nothing happens. But this actually became something cool. And you did get the young, talented actors on board. And it's just awesome.
Well, that's part of I'll call it part of the package now. This is the package. If we move on, if we're lucky enough to get attention at the studios, then it'll be the conversation. Okay, we've got a great book. We have ways to adapt it. We've got an actress who fits perfectly in the role. Mm-hmm. And I hope that's enough for them to get excited. Might have to go look for a writer, a screenplay, or a Bible for television. Mm-hmm. But I think we've got a pretty cool project here, and we're ready to go with it.
Bill, when you're looking at a project to develop, whether it's a television show or a movie or a podcast, what is it that you're specifically looking for? And what was it about Pedro's story in American Afterlife that really resonated?
Well, first of all, it's a great story, a great book, survival, as Pedro put it. A young girl who survives the earthquake. Everyone else in Eugene and the surroundings yells for the National Guard to help them. Cielo goes the opposite direction. She doesn't want to be saved. She wants to take care of herself and find her mother. Up front, reading it, I didn't know why she was really doing this. And then as I discovered the character, and the character grew, as in the podcast with Scarlett, then you understood what she was doing and why she was doing it. And it all made sense. And that's what you need in any form of creative development. You need a great story. You need a great character. It reminds me, and we've referenced The Last of Us. I love science fiction. This is science, not fiction. It could be. The Last of Us is one of the references I make. Another great project I like called Cielo, which is about survival. A little different, but it's one lead character, a female, who's trying to survive in a new environment. So going back to what I said earlier, you got to have a great story to start and then build on that. And building on that means developing the screenplays for the podcasts, bringing Scarlett on board and letting her loose. And wow, what a great job she did with that character. You see the words on the page, but they don't come to life until an actor comes on board.
Yeah, and I saw it like, with Ultraviolet, you're funny, and I'm not that funny. And my humor tends to be a lot darker, but I realized you're perfect for this because working with River and Allison, River and Allison did a good job setting you up, and then you just really executed the humor, which was great.
Now, Scarlett is someone audiences have literally grown up watching, from Daddy's Home to Lucifer, and now she's stepping into the lead role of Cielo in American Afterlife. She's also built a massive following. I think you've got more Instagram and TikTok followers than anyone I've ever interviewed before. So this is a little bit intimidating for me. And let's dive into two things first. When did you know that acting was something you wanted to do? First question.
Yeah, it's interesting because I started acting when I was 4 years old. So that wasn't that much of a conscious decision, besides the fact that I have an older sister, and growing up with an older sister, everything that she does, I want to do because she's the coolest. And so she started acting, and then immediately I was I want to do what she's doing. And I fell in love with it. The first thing I booked was Daddy's Home. The first big thing I did was Daddy's Home. And then I was 6 years old during that. And still I was like, I didn't know how to read. Like my first table read, my mom was like, she would tell me my line and I would just repeat after her because I couldn't read the pages. So yeah, I think like the first time I really like thought about it and like made it a decision for myself, like, yeah, this is what I want to do. It was probably when I was like 10 years old. It was probably when I was like, okay, I'm aware that this is a job. Like I'm working right now, but I love it. Like it never feels like work, but I love it. Yeah.
When we were going through, and I say we, really Bill, through the whole casting process, and we had several people that we were thinking about. Bill, what did you see in Scarlett that you thought really just said, she is Cielo?
Well, I obviously looked at her work, and with a lot of the other actors I saw, I could see their work online. I could see on YouTube and other places. They were very good, but they just didn't seem to click with the character that I know as Cielo. To go further, Pedro, this is not only Cielo in the book, this is Pedro's daughter, Turtle, Tortuga.
Yeah.
So you got to find someone that sort of fits in all those boxes. And yeah, I just looked at a lot of material, and then when we talked, we'd sent it out to a number of people and got reactions, good reactions. But when we spoke, and I could just hear it there, that she just loved this character and really felt she could get inside it.
What did you do, Scarlett, to prepare for the role? Was it something that you just were able to dive into, or did you really need to be more of a method actor?
I remember when I first got the email or whatever it was, I looked at all the scripts. I think I printed them all out, actually. And I read through all of them, in one sitting. I just read through the whole story, and I was like, yeah, I fell in love with Cielo. I fell in love with the story. But that was actually the last time I read any of it before we actually recorded any of it, because I didn't want all of the stuff that you find out throughout the story to not feel like a surprise anymore and not feel new and fresh when I find those things out. I kind of didn't prepare that much because I felt like I really clicked with Cielo, and I was like, I really understand her after I read the whole story. So.
And how did acting in a podcast differ from being on a movie set or a TV set?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I've done voiceover work, but this is also so different from that. I was actually, while I was doing my makeup today, I was thinking about it, and it finally clicked to me what it felt like, because this is so dramatic and real. It kind of felt like I was doing ADR for a really awesome TV series, and then just the whole thing was ADR. But that's kind of it, because it didn't feel like I was filming necessarily, because we weren't filming video, and then it doesn't really feel like a voiceover because I've done a lot of cartoons, and that's just not what this is. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I say in the ADR version of it, or voiceover, you're looking at a screen, mm-hmm. and you see pictures, and you're saying, and you're being told, this is what the character is. Do the voice for this character that you're looking at. And you're actually going along while watching the character. Here, which was interesting, Cielo had nothing to look at except the wall. And she had to get into character in this small little room. And I would imagine, you tell me if I'm wrong, Cielo, sort of take yourself to that place and imagine yourself being in the interrogation room or out looking for her mother or any of the other tasks we ask her to do with just her voice.
Pedro, I want to unpack a little bit more of your personal life, because you obviously had a challenging upbringing where you having to fend for yourself and dive into dumpsters for sustenance. And then you also had some run-ins with the law. And am I okay to bring that up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you mind sharing that a little bit with us, that story?
Yeah, it was interesting what Bill was saying about, when the rescuers came in and everybody went towards the rescuers and the soldiers or the police, and then Cielo, she goes away. And that was definitely me. I would go away. I've never trusted the police. I wouldn't look at a rescuer and think that's my friend. And I think the first time I ran from the police, I was 12. I always was hesitant around law enforcement. And I imagine this character would be too, considering that she and her mom were here without papers and, all of that. And my parents have worked for the Border Initiative in Southern Arizona and worked sin papeles and all that. So I know some of that backstory and some of that hesitation. But then also, I just made some really bad choices when I was in high school like, Scarlett's acting and winning awards. And I was getting expelled from schools and arrested. Like one time, one of those stories was like, it probably wouldn't work in a movie because it just seemed so ridiculous. But I remember once I was at a school that had accepted me, even though I had already been expelled from 2 high schools just because I was an athlete. And so I was there to be an athlete, and I knew what my job was, but I was also dealing drugs. And I was in religion class, and we were reading Dante's Inferno, and Father Lopez, the principal, comes in with 2 police officers behind him. And this girl next to me just turns to me and she's like, "That's you, isn't it?" And I was like, "It's me." So I got arrested in religion class that time. But, I also went to reform school, and I was incarcerated for a short period of time.
What's your problem?
I was a teenager. Yeah, exactly. I have a lot of problems.
It's truly a remarkable story in how you've really been able to turn your life around and become a best-selling author, and obviously, hopefully a number one if we're lucky downloaded podcast, fiction podcast.
And a dad.
And a father. You have 2 daughters, correct?
Yeah, I have 2 daughters, and then multiple dogs, cats. Yeah.
Are they artistic as well?
My dogs?
Your daughters?
A little bit. My younger daughter, who Cielo is based on, is actually a tattoo artist. She went straight from high school to tattoo school. She didn't want to go to college.
Oh, I love
And
that.
so she draws and does tattoos, and she actually did this tattoo on my arm, the bird.
Oh, that's incredible. I don't think many people can say that their daughter gave them a tattoo. That's cool.
And then she even gives me metaphors. This is a carnivore's dilemma metaphor on my other arm. But
amazing. That's her design? Did she come up with that?
I said I want a carnivore's dilemma tattoo, and she came up with the fish that was half eaten. And yeah.
So clever.
No, I was really lucky. You asked, like, basically, how did I come from that background and navigate a different future? I was really fortunate. My parents really struggled, but they also kept working and kept struggling. And my mom she was unmedicated. She had mental health problems when I was a kid. She's now medicated. She's now been sober for, I think, 5 years. My dad had some mental health issues, and he's on medication now. So they kept working, and they developed into different people and modeled that. And I'm really lucky that I saw that. But also, back when I was struggling, they were struggling. I was adopted by multiple women. My best friend's mom took me in when I was homeless and let me live at her house for 5 months before I went to the University of Oregon. And then one of my high school teachers at my last high school realized, how much I'd struggled and been arrested and expelled and everything. And she kind of adopted me. She would take me out to coffee and encourage me and give me books and, treat me like somebody who was important and, just gave me that unconditional love. And she didn't even know me, And then my college poetry professor, I was basically just going to college to be an athlete like that. And I thought that was all I was there for. And she really encouraged me. She was, she said, "You have all these stories inside you, and you write these poems that are really stories." And she kept encouraging me, and she and her husband would have me over, and they would make me dinner and then chain smoke and read poems aloud to me. And it was like amazing. It was so different from my chaotic household. So I just got adopted by wonderful people. And then also my parents modeled the ability to change at all points in life. And then I had a college wrestling coach who was the Olympic Greco coach. And I wanted to be an Olympic wrestler, but I never got better than 5th at nationals. So I didn't make it. But I got adopted by him, and I got adopted by all these incredible teachers and professors, and by my best friend's mom. And I learned that there were just other ways to live,
Thank you for sharing. And I'd love to see your daughter tattoo a heart on your sleeve because you really put it out there, man. I think it's a wonderful story. Bill, you've worked on massive productions, like we mentioned earlier, The Rock, and then all the way to projects with me. Tell me some of the similarities of working on a massive project down to a podcast, and then, obviously some of the differences as well.
Yeah, I'll go back to say that I think all good projects stem from a story or want of a story. When you're dealing with the studios on the tentpole pictures like The Rock, I mean, it becomes a big machine. We developed at my company the screenplay. Strange story. I found an article in the LA Times many years ago about a lighthouse off the coast of California. And the lighthouse attendant was there all alone. And every month, the ship would come out and give them supplies. It was a woman once, it was a man another time, but they're all alone on this island. So talking with my writers in the office, I said, well, how do we use that? Is there any way? And they said, noodled it about as always, and said, what if a plane crashed on the island? And she was the only one who could avert disaster. And then it became, what if Hannibal Lecter's plane crashed on the island? Mm-hmm. And then it became, what if the president's plane crashed on the island? And then it got bigger and bigger, and then we said, this is no movie. But then, by happenstance, we were up in San Francisco for the premiere of another movie they wrote and I produced. And we looked across the bay, and one of the writers said, Alcatraz. I said, yeah. I said, remember that story about the crash? And then they started to work on that idea, and it became, what was the theme of the story, not breaking out of Alcatraz, but breaking in. And the studio said, well, that's different. So that's how that evolved. And then everyone got very excited and went through the same processes we did here, screenplay, director, casting, and shooting the movie over an 8-month period. Other projects, I just finished a documentary, which is different, where you start out without any story and find your way through it over a 2-year period. But the similarities are there. It's putting the elements together so that you make sure you have a solid base, you add components to it, and every time you add someone, a writer, an actor, director, if you're going on another project, that it builds, that it gets better and better and better. And that's luckily what we were able to do with the podcast. It's gotten, the book was great, the screenplays were a little better in terms of the screenplays. Scarlett was amazing. I directed it, so I was amazing too. And now we're at the point where we've almost released it to the world, but your job, what you've been doing at Benztown, is getting the world ready for it. And I think we found out yesterday we're trending on Apple and Spotify and all these platforms, something that was hoped for but not really expected. And here we are on the cusp of putting the baby out to the world, and we're all excited and nervous and hopeful.
I keep on going to the charts and clicking refresh. Scarlett, you really have 3, if you will, full-time gigs. Obviously, actor and, major movie productions and television and American Afterlife, we just talked about. You are also still a student, correct? You still go to school. You just mentioned earlier before we started that you're going to prom tomorrow, which I love. And there's tomorrow, by the way, the team are going to be at Barnes & Noble with Pages to Podcast at Barnes & Noble. So you're going to come and do that with Pedro and Bill. And then you're bringing your dress with you. And then you are going to go to prom. Mm-hmm. And you just went to Coachella as an influencer. And do I have these numbers? I think it's over 4 million TikTok followers. Am I correct with that? And then
I think I have 3 million on TikTok and then like 1 million on Instagram.
Oh my goodness.
How do you juggle all of that?
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially like when I went to, because I have been on and off with like regular in-person school and then online school when I'm working and stuff. So when I had a little break from work, I went back to in-person school for like middle school for the first time, and I had to I created a separate Instagram account for like the people that I would meet and stuff, just so that it was like, I don't know. I try to keep it very separate in my life. I think it just makes things easier, but yeah.
So you just compartmentalize everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All these sections of my life are just completely different, and they don't really usually cross over.
Because I can't imagine being a high school student, and also because you have a big film coming out this year, right?
Yeah, I do.
So how were you on a film, but also going to high school?
Yeah, I graduated high school, I think second semester of sophomore year, because I was like, I got my experience. I'm done here. So I graduated, and then I have my friends from high school that I love.
When you go to an event like Coachella, as an influencer. Do you have that mapped out, what you're planning to do, similar to a script, or is it more just organic in terms of what you want to post from there?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. It's a lot of like the get ready with me videos do really well. So I just knew I was going to do one of those, like picking out my outfit every day, because it's a big thing that everyone's like, what are these people wearing for Coachella? And then I try to break it up though, so that it's not like my entire time there is work. So I was like, okay, I'll do one video in the morning. And then if like I just like want to make a video later, I will. But that was like the only thing I had planned.
And then when you're making those videos, do you edit those yourself, or do you have someone that helps you with that?
Yeah, I edit them myself. It was funny. I was there with like one of my best friends and my boyfriend, and I would kick them out of the room for like an hour. I was like, I have to make my video and then we could go.
I love it. So you have production and you kind of direct yourself, your acting, production skills. I mean, that's
Editing.
Yeah, really very, very impressive.
Thank you.
How have you found, and this is part of this process that I've found personally remarkable, that being an influencer has helped you with your acting career? Have those two things brought synergy?
I think once I've started getting into influencing, it's really just taught me a lot more about who my audience is and like who is watching me. So that was a really interesting thing, because it's like, okay, the branded content that I do, who usually watches me, like how would my audience like the product that I am like trying to sell, I guess. Yeah, so that's just been really interesting, is like having an awareness of like who's actually watching me, because you see this number and it's just a number. It's just so hard to like put into perspective how many people that is, but to like know a little bit more about them is kind of cool to be like, okay, these are the type of people who are watching me.
Being in Los Angeles, I tend to put things in perspective when it's a large number to Dodger Stadium.
Yeah.
And that's, I think 65,000.
Okay.
And then you think of, 4 million TikTok followers. That is what, 100 Dodger stadiums or 80 Dodger stadiums.
We should invite them all. Scarlett Estevez Day. If you throw out the first pitch, there'll probably be 20,000 fans there.
I am really impressed with your work ethic. I've gotten to go. We went to Dallas together for the podcast movement, and just like I mentioned earlier, you're going to come and do the event at Barnes & Noble tomorrow and then go to prom. You work incredibly hard. And I'm sure as a social influencer, in a lot of ways, you're never truly off, because you're expected to put all this content. And you have really given yourself to this project, which I think is wise beyond the years. And a story I want to share, just in terms of Scarlett, we were sitting at dinner. Our plane had gotten delayed. Your mother, myself, and Suzanne, we were at an airport restaurant, like a TGI Fridays or something. And the check came and Scarlett offered to pay for it, which was, I thought, just so kind and
so wrong.
So, Who does that in LA? Yeah.
Producer pays.
Yeah, don't listen to Bill. Don't listen to Bill. But that meant a lot to me, and just says a lot about who you are as a person. Pedro, I have to admit, when people always say, oh, the book is always better. And you hear that when so many things are developed. Oh, did you read the book? And so while this was all Bill and Jake, and I really had very little to do with the actual outcome of the quality of the product, creative, thank you. I still was nervous that this was going to be something that you were going to like as the author. And how did you feel about it when you first heard it?
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't really feel like anything that I make is sacred. And I'm always really happy to have a collaborative team. Even when it's just my book, like my editor of this book, Sarah, was brilliant. And she had some ideas that, for content editing, definitely made the book better than I would have made it on my own. And even before she gets the book, I send it to my agent, and my agent gives feedback. And then once content edits are done, the final editing is sometimes like something that reveals really interesting details. The copy editor on this book was amazing. She wrote 7 pages of proper nouns and like double checked every single one. I mean, so there's always a team in every process. So when people are like, oh, the book's better, and the way the author wrote it is the only way that you can present this material or something like that, I don't really believe in that. I think that I'm always working with the team. And I think that teams make things better. And honestly, my daughters will read things ahead of time and give me feedback. Because especially if I have a teen character, I don't imagine that I'm still a teenager, And so I was always checking in with students and my daughters and like checking details. And so I think there's always a team. And then when you have something like this, you have the opportunity for it to be a bigger and more beautiful and more impactful thing. And so I was excited to see where River and Allison would write it. I was excited what Bill would add to the project. I was excited once I heard that Scarlett was involved, like, what's her voice going to be like and how's that going to change the character? So I think there were so many opportunities for this to be a better thing. And I'm really excited about it becoming this better thing. I was excited to hear the final project. Jake's work on sound design is amazing. And that's something I know nothing about. I mean, there's so many things I know nothing about. But I was just like really excited to see where things went. And also there are elements, I know River brought in elements from book 2. So there were things in this podcast as American Afterlife that weren't even in the original book because they're in the sequel that isn't even out as a book yet. I mean, it was just such a cool opportunity to see a bigger and better product. And I'm excited for art to be more collaborative. So I was excited to hear it and I was happy with what happened.
I love hearing that, and great job to Bill and to Jake and to River and to Scarlett and everybody involved bringing it to life. Bill, what were you trying to accomplish? And thank you for bringing up the soundscape, Pedro, with the soundscape. I know you and Jake spent a lot of time with that, making sure that it hit the mark.
Yeah. So one of getting into this, I started listening to a lot of podcasts because I wasn't a podcast follower, Wait, Don't Tell Me, which is really not a podcast, but a show. I listened to Homecoming, Serial, a few of those, which were different creatively. What we needed to create here, since we were doing a drama, and I go back to old-time radio, where they had the guys doing the sound effects right there on stage with the actors, and they were on stage, and they had an audience, and they would make it work. Here we have many more tools with the soundscape, and it was an opportunity to really immerse the audience in that world. The shaking of the earthquake, which you can almost feel when you listen to the podcast, and then the quiet moments with Scarlett. Things you don't notice, too, that Jake worked. A door closing. There's a phenomenal scene, which everyone's commented on, when Cielo tries to save her French professor. And the sound effects of that were just perfect, and people commented that it was like I was in the room. That's very satisfying to hear. If you're going to capture an audience, you've got, in our case, 20 minutes, 22 minutes to get people immersed enough so they want to come back for the next episode. I think the quality, too, of the production goes to you guys at Benztown and Jake, is that it sounds so much better than all these other podcasts I've heard. It seemed like they were just reciting dialogue to me.
Without the benefit when, being in TVs and movies, there's a screen. And so there's a whole other sense of stimulus, I guess. And so now without that, the sound becomes that much more important to be able to paint that picture. Did you find yourself more attentive to the sound than you would in a movie or a television show?
Well, more attentive in the fact that I was listening for things that worked or didn't work. Don't do that in a movie. But my hope is, because when we listen to these and play them back, Jake and you and I and everybody, you've got earphones on and you're hearing perfect sound and all of that. So we've got to make sure that works so that when someone picks up their phone and starts to listen to it or listens to it on Spotify or wherever they listen, that the quality is there so that they, again, feel like they're part of the drama. And that's hard to do. I guess Scarlett can attest to that. If you listen to podcasts or dramas in the car, I don't know if you use earphones or headphones or just...
I usually listen to a lot of podcasts in my car. So yeah, it's like my car sound system.
Do you spend a fair amount of time in terms, I'm obviously a radio guy, which you guys know, and this is primarily a radio podcast. This is a little bit adjacent, but a lot of radio companies are in the podcast business, including ourselves. Do you listen to much radio, Scarlett?
I do listen to the radio sometimes. Like there's certain stations that I have in my car that like I love, and I always know that they'll play the music I like.
What percentage of your time when you're listening to audio would you say you're listening to a podcast versus streaming, which would be Spotify or Pandora or a radio station?
I feel like it honestly might even out because whenever I have like a longer drive, like if I'm driving from LA, Los Angeles to like Palm Springs or something, then I'll listen to like a podcast, and so that's like longer. So there's like more time spent on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, time spent listening. Good job. TSL. Being Cielo, and now that we're done with the project, and as Bill mentioned, we're putting it out there to the world to listen, which by the way is on Tuesday. This is going to come out right on Tuesday as well. So please, American Afterlife on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, please subscribe. Love to hear your feedback on it. And by the way, if you leave a review, we are going to send you a free pair of socks from our friends of Pair of Thieves. We have 3 different custom editions that our very own Scarlett and Suzanne helped design, and thank you. And I'm going to get into Pair of Thieves here in a couple minutes. They've been a phenomenal sponsor, but we're first several hundred people to leave a review will get a free pair of socks, so please check it out. But back to that, Scarlett, and now that this is out there in the world, what would you like people to take away from the podcast and your character, Cielo?
I think Cielo just emotionally goes on such a beautiful journey throughout the podcast, and like there's a lot of growth that she goes through, and I think she was also written so well as a teenager, which is such a hard thing to do. You know, Pedro was talking about how he was talking to his daughters and other kids to be like, is this accurate? And it was written so well as a teenager, so I feel like for me at least, there was so much that, yeah, she even taught me that I was like, wow, that's so interesting how like she like was able to like kind of let this guard down that she's built to protect herself. And I think that that's something that, you know, people of all ages can even learn from. Yeah, she's just such a beautiful character. So I hope that there is some things that, I mean, I'm sure there's some things that everyone's going to connect with through her and just be like, wow, I hope she teaches everyone something.
Has Rue heard, your daughter Rue, has she heard the podcast yet?
No, she hasn't. And I'm really excited. I was starting to listen through the whole thing, and then I realized, oh, maybe I want to wait and like listen to the ending with her, since the book is dedicated to her, and since Scarlett's playing Cielo, and it's just like such a cool connection. So I haven't heard the ending, so don't tell me. And I'm going to listen to the whole thing episode by episode with her. So I'm really excited about that. Actually,
document some of that. I would love to see the reaction.
Okay. Wait, we didn't really interview you though. What was your biggest part in making the podcast? What did you struggle with? What was fun?
Pedro, you are a natural interviewer. I'm very, and probably being the author, I appreciate you asking. This has been so much fun for me, really, to watch Bill. Radio's adjacent in a lot of ways to the entertainment industry. I love radio. I'm very passionate about it, but it's always been looked down upon. It's not movies. It's not television, but I just feel there's such an art in storytelling, and podcasting in many ways, as Bill had hit on, brings back the golden age of radio when we were listening prior to my generation, but Little Orphan Annie and The Green Lantern and all of these shows were initially very much like a podcast, and the soundscape and acted out. And so podcasting is, in so many ways, which I think is cool, has brought back that era. And I had always looked back at that era as being envious. I wanted to be part of those productions and be in that room, and I never had that opportunity to. And so now I was able to do that to a degree and watch Bill work, and I learned so much, and it's just been a tremendous amount of fun. Nerve-wracking too, because it's completely different in terms of the discovery. We've got an advantage with radio in that they've got built-in audiences, you know, so a radio station's got a built-in cume. So you're not necessarily starting from scratch. With a podcast, you truly are starting from scratch. And so trying to get the ears on it and getting people to listen, which has been, thank you to Scarlett and sharing on her Instagram and TikTok. All of that's really important, being featured in Apple. And so we're putting ourselves out there in a different way. Yeah. And it's been fun, but also a little bit anxiety inducing. But I couldn't ask for a better team. And I'm so grateful for Pedro, for obviously you, and so great to meet you in person, and obviously writing a terrific story, but being part of this process and really wanting to be part of this process. I got to watch a documentary the other night that I highly recommend about Wings, Paul McCartney's band. And they had asked him a question about how did you feel when Live and Let Die was covered by Guns N' Roses? And his answer is very similar to what you had just said. He was really actually honored by it. And he likes when people take his art and change it and see their own interpretation or create their own interpretation of it. And so it's been fun to see that process as well.
I'll say one thing. You said a moment ago, the end of Cielo's story, but I'll remind us all that this is a trilogy. There are 3 books. So after this one, on to the next one, and as soon as Pedro writes it, the 3rd one.
Can you get started on that, man?
I have 221 terrible pages. So if you want to read some bad draft,
you finish that in the hotel room tonight, please.
Yeah, I'll get on it.
This has been a lot of fun talking with all of you guys, and I've got so much gratitude to be able to come together and work with such creative talents and be part of this process. And I think the last thing that I want to ask you is really, we're all 3 different I think, Pedro, you and I are same generation. Scarlett, younger generation. Then, of course.
Wait a minute.
Being this is mostly a career podcast, I'd love to know how you each see your own respective industries evolving now in this new world of AI that we've, are really kind of fully in now. And I'll start, actually, Scarlett, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. How do you see that in your industry being, I guess, both an actress and an influencer changing in this new AI world? Yeah,
it's so interesting to see it because I remember when AI first came out, I was just excited that it could help me with my homework. But then very quickly people started being like, oh, like there's AI actors and actresses, and that was like just so, I was like, what are we talking about? But it's funny, I've actually watched a few videos on like TikTok and stuff of like a casting director working with these AI actors and actresses, and I don't feel that threatened yet. As of now, they're a little incompetent, so that's good. But yeah, it's just interesting too. There's like, people are making like versions of TV shows, but like it's AI, like fruits. It's so weird. There's like dating shows. It's really strange. I'm not completely threatened, but I just feel like in the creative realms of things, I feel like no matter what, true art is like having people and like hearts attached to projects, and you can't really do that with artificial intelligence. So I think although it will be an option, I really truly think like real art at the end of the day can't be taken over by AI.
I love that answer.
Yeah, and your humor and your sarcasm and the gravelly quality to your voice sometimes is amazing and made this podcast so much better. So, and I don't know the names of any AI actors, nor do I really want to, but I mean, I'm really glad that you're an actual very, very talented human.
Thank you.
I think your career, and Bill and I have talked about this, is going to be a rocket ship. It already is a rocket ship, but you are so wise beyond your years and a great speaker. I got to hear the interview that you did with Rick Morton the other day, and you just are phenomenal at this.
Thank you so much.
Obviously a wonderful actress as well.
I don't get AI on my flip phone.
Oh my God.
Pedro, how is AI changing being an author?
It's really funny that you're asking me that today because I just got my settlement letter from Anthropic.
Really?
Yeah, Anthropic stole all of the critically acclaimed literary novels from the last 50 years because they're still within copyright, and fed it to Claude. And somebody in the industry leaked that they were doing this. And so the big 5 publishers all banded together, basically, and there was a class action suit. And it turns out they stole 66,000 literary novels, and 3 of my novels were stolen and fed in there because they're trying to teach AI to write non-patterned material. And the thing about literary novels is that, unlike being famous like Scarlett, I'm just playing pretend at my desk in my house, and so I'm writing to myself, and I could go any direction with my writing, and I don't write outline novels, and I don't write in time order either. So there are all these thematic loops, but the themes only work for myself. And then sometimes I have to get feedback from my agent, like, this is too crazy, you know? And so because I'm not writing on an outline, I'm not writing a detective novel or a romance novel, AI doesn't know how to create a literary novel. So 3 of my books were stolen by Anthropic, and there was a whistleblower and there's a big suit, and they settled. And so we're all getting paid a little bit of money for the books, but all combined, right, they lost, I think, $3.5 billion to us. But the day after they signed the settlement papers with us, they signed an international deal for $187.5 billion. So they made $184 billion by stealing our books. So
scary.
Yeah, but the funny thing about all of that is that they can steal all of our novels, but it doesn't really make sense. Because if you add William Faulkner and Toni Morrison and Ernest Hemingway all together.
And Pedro Hoffmeister.
Yeah, definitely. But you put those 3 together and then you spit out an amalgam of their work, it's actually terrible. And it doesn't have any unique voice, and it's way too many weird things put together, you know? They're trying to teach their AI machine, which is really what it is, a machine to spit out a literary product. And I just don't think it's going to happen. And I've seen AI poetry, and it's really, really, really bad. And I'm thankful that I have so many friends who write actual beautiful poems, you know?
Appreciate that insight. I was unaware of that lawsuit. As part of that lawsuit, did they remove your books from the training, or do their models still have that information?
Their models absolutely still have that information. Their machines can't really unlearn the way they have it set up. It's basically, from what I understand from the lawsuit, it's basically a cancer cell. So the cancer cell just grows and eats and eats and eats and eats. And they're hoping that this cancer cell is going to produce something beautiful. I don't see it happening. But if there is a field that this really helps humanity and the planet, that would be great. But I think stories are going to survive no matter what. Stories are always going to be told. And whether they're told by a voice actor, or they're told in a film, or they're told in a narrative poem, or they're told in a novel, or they're just told around a campfire, I think stories are always going to live on. And I think this whole obsession with machines making things is not getting us any closer to our animal selves. If we could think about what's most important for all the animals on the earth, and what's important for all the other living things on the earth and non-living things, and rather than what can a machine make, then I think we'll kind of get to a little bit of a better place. So that's what I'm hoping, is that basically AI in some fields fails horribly.
Bill, how about you?
I mean, I have to echo sort of what Pedro is saying. A lot of people, especially on the writing side, I won't talk to the acting side because I agree with Scarlett, it's not there yet. And
No.
And I think SAG has gotten into it fairly deeply, where if you're using someone who is not a living being, you have to announce it. And I think that's going to turn people off too. It works on the social platforms as you're looking at something for 20 seconds or so, and what they're churning out is just incredible. I think the writers have the most difficult position, because there are writers who are fantastic, and I agree with you, come up with ideas that a computer won't. But there are writers who are struggling, who may not have the creative talent, and they're using AI to steal those words from other writers. And normally it would be plagiarism, but AI has so much information that it's going to be difficult to separate the two and figure out, was this screenplay written by AI? Does it matter to a filmmaker who says, I love this script? So there are difficult questions ahead on that side. It certainly has made and will make, going forward, filmmaking easier, both creatively and technically. But again, we've said it here many times, what's the story? Who's the story? Where are we going to get these stories? And now you see Hollywood. As an insider in Hollywood, I see it over and over again. I don't know if the audience does, but all we're seeing now is, they announced Top Gun 3. I can guarantee you that'll be the exact same story as 1 and 2, except except Tom Cruise might be in a wheelchair. I don't know. But the studios are just banking on sequels because they know the numbers. They know what they have to spend in order to get this and spend in order to do that. So you're losing out on a lot of creative talent. I go back and tell you a story. I was working with a studio executive, and this was back when they developed stuff. And we were developing The Rock, actually, and he was coming out with another movie called Crimson Tide. And I said, oh, wow, interesting idea. Where'd that come from? He said, well, I'm just thinking we haven't had a good submarine movie in many years. They actually went back and looked at Run Silent, Run Deep, and all these other submarine movies and stole scenes from all of them, put them together, and made a pretty good movie. But someone had to figure it out, a real person. Now I don't know who's going to do that or how they're going to do it.
Really?
My favorite film from the last few years was American Fiction. Percival Everett is a literary novelist, and he wrote Erasure.
Amazing book. I saw that book.
Okay.
And he made a very kind of dumbed down book, kind of a silly romance, and it took off.
Yes, exactly.
Great
he
story.
wrote this cliche stereotype.
Yes.
And then that ended up becoming the bestseller, even though he was writing these amazing literary novels that nobody was reading.
Yes.
I just think a book like that and a film like that was all about the people. It was about what he wrote and then how they adapted it. And then there were just incredible actors in that film. So I'm definitely on the side of people versus machines, but maybe we're going towards Terminator or something.
Well, your insight means a lot, and I love the different perspectives from certainly different aspects of the business, because it's something that we're obviously watching and the radio industry very closely. Part of creating a podcast is certainly having to finance the podcast, and that's been a learning experience in and of itself. I think that I'd mentioned radio has that built-in audience, and a brand new podcast does not. And advertisers are very much prone to wanting guaranteed impressions and knowing that there is a certain audience. And so as we were looking to try to get sponsors behind this to work with us, it was not easy, even given the tremendous talent that we have, because as a podcast, we are an unproven entity. And enter Bill again, who helped us with a phenomenal connection. Bill, do you mind sharing a little bit with us Pair of Thieves and what it is that they do and how they stepped up to help us?
Sure. This is a case of reverse nepotism, I think, which everyone's talking about in Hollywood. I'm the Nepo father. Along the way, we were looking for sponsorship and struggling because it's a new thing. We're exploring a new format even here. And just in the middle of the conversation I was having with my son, he said, well, what is it you guys need? And my son created a company called Pair of Thieves with two of his friends, his best friends. And it started with socks. They just really wanted to design some cool socks. They felt that Fruit of the Loom and all the other companies were doing white socks or black socks. And they started out very small and became very successful at it. Selling in Walmart and Target and overseas and everywhere. And when I told him about it, he said, wow, this might be a good match for us. And we started talking creatively and also with marketing team over here at Benztown, and it just gelled. And they became a great partner for us and have supported us to this day and continue to support us through the release of the film. So I'm very happy. I won't disinherit him, or more likely he won't disinherit me, I hope. It's where relationships, and in this case, family relationships, really work to help everybody.
And Bill is, I think, underselling this a little bit. Pair of Thieves has turned into a big company. And if you walk into Target or Walmart, you are going to find Pair of Thieves and high quality, great designs, socks, underwear, undershirts. I used to wear Calvin Klein undershirts, and I've completely converted to Pair of Thieves. And I'm not going to show you this, but I swear to you, I've got Pair of Thieves underwear on right now. You're going to have, so does Bill. You're going to have to take our word for it. And Scarlett and Suzanne got to work with one of the co-founders, Cash Warren, who's a big movie producer in his own right, on designing 3 different pairs of Pair of Thieves socks that we're going to be giving away to
American Afterlife socks.
Sorry, Pair of Thieves American Afterlife socks. Thank you, Bill. This is why Bill is such a legendary director. He's gotten on point. Pair of Thieves American Afterlife socks. So tell me a little bit about those designs, Scarlett, and I will make sure also that we post a few of the pictures that you and Cash took last week at the Pair of Thieves studios. But fill us in on the socks if you don't mind.
Yeah, so a few of the designs that we came up with, it has a lot of like little pieces of like information and little things that you'll hear about throughout the podcast.
Easter eggs.
Yeah, like little Easter eggs. Yeah, little Easter eggs throughout the podcast are kind of like printed all over the socks. It's really cute. I really like what we came up with. And then there's some that are like just say American Afterlife on them, which are awesome. And then there's another one that are like, it's cool too because I usually wear long socks and then I fold my long socks down to be ankle socks because I never get ankle socks for some reason. But then we actually also have ankle socks that are like really cute and they look almost like, what's the word for it? I don't know how to explain it, but they're really cute. I love them. And
they've got a retro, the ankle socks have a retro look to them. And I think Bill helped, had a little bit of influence on those. Those turned out great.
Everyone did.
So
team effort.
Big thank you to Pair of Thieves and great job with the design, Scarlett. And thank you obviously to Bill for making that connection. Again, anybody that leaves a review is going to get a free pair of the limited edition Pair of Thieves socks, which American Afterlife Pair of Thieves socks, which are not available in stores, only through the podcast itself. And I want to leave and thank you, by the way, Jake, thank you again for rejiggering this a little bit, but
as long as we're rejiggering, that's Pair of Thieves is the perfect name. Considering that Cielo is going house to house and raiding and stealing things too.
That's actually true. That's a great pickup. Let's do that.
And if you're in a survival situation, taking care of your feet is really important. So Pair of Thieves.
Pair of Thieves' motto is ready for everything.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, I love
That's
it.
why they're there.
I love that. So let's pick it up right after Scarlett. We talked about the socks and I'm thanking Bill. And then we're going to do with Pedro picking it up with it being the perfect title. Sound good?
That sounds perfect.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
And Pair of Thieves is actually the perfect title because we've got Cielo going house to house and finding these objects that she needs and taking care of your feet is so important in a survival situation. And Pair of Thieves' motto is, Bill?
Ready for everything.
Perfect.
It truly is. I didn't even realize that. What a great fit.
It's so good.
Bill, again, always
job,
thinking. Team, this has been so much fun. What a just treat to be able to connect with all 3 of you and to work on this project together. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a few others. It really, truly was a large team that came together and made all this happen. I want to thank Darren Silva, Josh Mesnick, Ted Evans, MJ Block, Sean Andre, River, Ron Shapiro, who I think introduced us to River, Omar Thompson, Estefania Padilla, who helped us early on. We've got, of course, Irma Blanco, who is here and been a big part of this, Robbie Gessel and Susan Aksu, who's in our marketing team, Lisa Dollinger. I've got Mike McVeigh and then John and Jeremy from Gamut. There really, truly has been a team effort. And Scarlett, thank you to your mom. I know she made the trip with us to Podcast Movement. And so thank you for everybody for your help with this project. It's really been an honor and a lot of fun. Again, American Afterlife. It will be available on Tuesday. Please listen to the pilot and follow it wherever you get your podcasts. Any closing words or anything else before we wrap this up?
Where do I get my check?
It's in the mail, Bill. It's in the mail. Pedro, anything else on your side?
No, I'm just so grateful and I'm excited to hear what listeners think. So thank you for listening.
And Scarlett?
Yeah, me as well. It's like we've been working on this for so long, so I'm just so excited for everyone to finally listen to it and, yeah, give us their feedback.
Again, the American Afterlife podcast available on Tuesday, 4/21. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you'll leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. Make sure to follow on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Engineered by Darren Silva. Produced and edited by Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.